Welcome back to the channel. Today, why don't we cover JavaScript operators, which is arithmetic notation, so how to add, subtract, divide, multiply. And then we're also going to talk about the JavaScript math function, which covers math floor, math ceiling, and math random. And then our sample build at the end will be to generate two random numbers and then multiply those numbers together so you have an output result. So why don't we start with arithmetic operators first? So an arithmetic operator is very simple, and why don't we take a look at my screen now and then we can see what we're talking about. So first, if we look at these JavaScript arithmetic operators, we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, incrementation and decrementation, the modulus operator, and the exponential. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division are really simple. These are things that you already know how to do. Two things that are going to be new to you is probably the incrementation and decrementation. And all we're really saying in this is we're going to go up by one or go down by one. So take a look at my screen now and you'll see that I have two variables. We have a variable called first and a variable called second. And these are two integers. Now you know they're integers because they're not wrapped in quotes. So as we talked about before, especially when writing code, integers, you apply math to them so they don't need quotes around it. Strings, you would wrap them in quotes. Remember, 1 and 0 are different from 10, right? So the word 10 and the actual 10 are two different things. In line 3 of my code, you'll see that I've applied the multiplication arithmetic operator so I can multiply the first and the second variable, and then we come up with a new total variable. And you can do subtraction, you can do addition, you can do division, and don't forget you can also do exponents. But we can do more than that. See, if I did this, if I said var new, or let's not use new, let's say var subtotal equals first, and I did plus plus, why don't you try that now and tell me what you get? And if you've done this properly, so if you actually just window alerted or you just did a console log of the subtotal, you should end up with 11 because first plus plus is an incrementation of 1, so it's first plus 1. So first equals 10, 10 plus 1, then you get 11. That's incrementation. And you would see incrementation whenever you, let's say, play video games and you get a coin, you go up by 1. Or if you lose a life in your video game, that's decrementation and you go down by 1. So that's what you want to keep track of. You want to keep track of incrementation and decrementation. So math operation is important in any code, especially when writing JavaScript or Python or whatever, is because we're going to learn three things today. We're going to learn how to generate a random number. We're going to floor that random number, which means, well, I'll tell you what it means later. And then we're going to apply the ceiling to this random number. So why random numbers? Well, because without random numbers in code, then things just get really super boring. So especially if you're writing a game, you don't want all your enemies to appear at the same spot at the same time. I'm pretty sure you played video games like that where it's just lame and it sucks because it's so predictable. So randomization allows you to create things that are unpredictable. So why don't we do that now? Okay, let's take a look at my screen. So now let's talk about the math random function. So if we look at this code, we say that math random will always return a number that's less than 1 and never return 1 itself. So it runs a number between 0 and not 1. And we write it with a capital M, math.random. And notice the capital M in math, you have to use that capital M, it's strict syntax. So why don't we actually look at some code and I'll write it out for you, okay? So why don't we create a variable called x and we'll say math.random, and you do these double parentheses because it's a function, I'll multiply it by 5. And if you were to print this out, and we'll just use a window alert, you're going to find out that it's a long number, but it begins with a 0. It's going to be 0 point and then whatever. But it's not going to be, so let's take a look at this. So math.random is we're going to return a function. And we say math.random, and it returns a number between 0 to 0.99999, but it never returns 1. But if I did this, if I said math.random multiplied by 5, well then you're going to get a number that's going to go from 0 to 4.99999, and it'll never return 5. So how do we play with this? Well, if you remember from the beginning that I told you that 0 is an actual number. So if I said 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, technically those are 5 numbers. So 0 is a thing. So 0 is the first thing. So let's take a look at this code. math.random multiplied by 5, and I return a number that's not 5, but up to 4.9999999. And let's say you don't want all those decimals at the end. Well, this is what we can now do. So we'll use something called math floor. Math.floor, and I'm going to floor these numbers. So what does flooring mean? Flooring basically means I'm going to take the rest of the decimals after the whole number and drop them off. It could be 4.9999, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to drop off the 0.999 and you'll be just left with 4. Inversely, you could use the ceiling feature, CEIL. And if you try that, you should get a result that's the inverse of math.floor. So this is important to understand. So what have you learned today? You've learned how to use the math floor function, you've learned how to use math ceiling, you've learned how to use the math random function. You've learned that those numbers do not reach the total value, right? So if you just did math random by itself, you're going to get 0 to 0.999. You'll never return 1. And you'll also learn how to use addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. This is a time for you to actually practice these things, right? I can just tell you how to do it, but it doesn't make any sense if you don't practice it. So practice manipulating these numbers. Make crazy big numbers. Take a big number and then go ahead and apply this weird, crazy exponent to it. And let's see what kind of numbers you end up with. Go ahead and actually try to compare two numbers later. In fact, math random is so important that the later projects we're going to build require that you use it. For example, when we start building our guessing game, when we start building a game about guessing two numbers, or we say, if these things happen based on whatever the computer says, we're going to go ahead and do this thing. Imagine we're building a poker or blackjack game. You want to be able to calculate what numbers are coming up next, right? So you'll understand the importance. All right. I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.